Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you? I got to be careful when I email you.
We're getting them. We're gonna use it. I love it. I think that's gonna be part of our thing. I have to re-edit the intro, and we're just gonna include that into the intro, so it's fine.
Well, I think that's great.
I am definitely gonna do that.
I,
Welcome to the Tuesday night episode of the JSA, and we will try to bring it forward from the 40s just a little bit. There's definitely some 40s nostalgia in the media and air right now, unfortunately, all the wrong reasons.
40s.
What's that?
I'm trying to understand why you're comparing what's going on now with the 40s.
Oh, well, here, this is my opinion of what is currently occurring. Nobody's watching just yet, so here's what I'm going to say. I believe that you are asking me about the intentional provocation of community upheaval to generate authoritarian military response to protests, along with bombastic statements encouraging ancient punitive actions to distract from surreptitious dismissal of scientific media expertise, investigations into election irregularities, and to gather support for the only piece of substantive legislation that this regime has any shot of passing. That is what I think is going on.
And I infer you were reading that?
I wrote it.
You wrote it. I was going to ask.
That was my getting out of my head. Yes, I read what I wrote. And
well,
that is what's happening. None of it is real. Go ahead. You speak.
We laugh. I laugh.
I try.
Make jokes because it's the only way to get through it. Life has become the second two acts of any episode of MASH.
Explain that, please. I mean, I never did the analysis on what that means.
MASH was about the Vietnam War. They may have called it Korea.
Right. Correct.
But it differs. Hey, Sherry, it differs from the book, and the author of the book wasn't crazy about the TV show, I guess, until he started getting royalties. Maybe not even then. But it was a very specific, very depressing message about how people are stuck in a horrible situation trying to save lives, and for whatever reason, it's an unending task. There's never any light at the end of that tunnel.
Sure.
And
somebody thought that was funny.
Well, it is kind of funny because you need that type of sense of humor in order to make it through.
Yeah.
And a lot of us are doing that now. The people who don't seem to have any sense of humor, the people who are doing it, which I take as a sign of guilt. But there's so many different places to draw the line, and I've drawn each and every one of them. But the latest, where you're sending in Marines for no reason whatsoever, and the 700 Marines outnumber the original number of protesters, who weren't doing shit other than protesting, which we've always believed is an American right, unless you're protesting King Trump.
I struggle to pay attention to the news these days because it is nothing but an infuriating pile of lies. So it's hard, and I know it's there, and we're here for you guys. We're here every Tuesday night. We are, this is a community that we have. We enjoy the folks who watch, and it is current events. We talk about current events, try to keep them pop culture related, but that's what's going on. And
I did manage to sneak Superman's name into my otherwise completely political column on Pop Culture Squad that ran yesterday.
So So as you and I were discussing, let's take this. There's an interesting thing that I saw today. I saw I didn't read the article, but someone a friend of ours did read one of the more recent like Entertainment Weekly or whatever that was coming out about Superman. There was one of those things out, and they this take and I like it. I'm kind of going to expand on it, and that's that Lex Luthor. It appears that the Lex Luthor that they're trying to do in Superman, the movie, it's just called Superman, right?
Yeah, I call it Superman. This movie.
Okay, Superman. This movie is he's not inherently evil, out to do crime and take over the world. He just wants to make everything better, and he wants the credit. And Superman usurps his credit, and that's the making of the antagonism. And I agree.
Yeah,
I think that is a great way to do Lex Luthor.
I agree as well. It has been pretty much what they've been doing in the comics the last several years.
Yes, I would say.
Lex Luthor never had a well-defined background. They kept on changing. At first, he was just a crook. Then he was a mad scientist. Then he was, I don't know what. I mean, they started drawing him to look like Nikita Khrushchev, which is true. And this Khrushchev was the enemy of all Americans in the 1950s. Luthor became sinister looking, but no more potent than he was before. And he always ran around in his prison garb, which made no sense at all. Although it was better than his green battle suit, which also makes no sense at all.
But it made a good toy.
It made good toy licenses.
Yes, someone who was involved in those licenses at one point, I'm sure.
I wasn't really involved. We had a whole licensing department at DC. Sure. Who could never figure me out because I'll tell you a story about that. The woman who's running the department and I were having a conversation in 1989, just before the Batman movie, and she said, "You know the story?" No, she said, "I just had to turn down a license for Batman condoms," and she was shocked and outraged that anybody would want that. And I said, "Batman condoms," and she says, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I understand why you turned it down, but did you offer them the Joker?" And she never looked at me the same way after that.
I lied. I did know that story. I just wanted you to tell it.
I see.
All right. So our guests are in the green room. We're going to get to them very shortly. I think one thing of news that we need to talk about. There are some running news themes that we have on the show. One is, diamond troubles, and certainly we could talk about them tonight. We're not going to talk about them tonight, but we could, because there's diamond troubles in news every day. But I think the bigger piece is the Warner Brothers Discovery divorce.
Oh yeah, well,
what's old is new again, as the age-old saying goes. It feels crazy. I don't know what to make of what comes out of it. There have been interesting words said about the future of DC Studios, which are encouraging for DC Studios. I don't know what that means about DC Comics. And really, to be honest, my biggest concern here is just the continued existence of DC Comics for whatever reason.
Right. I can comment on that.
All right, let's comment.
The movie industry is always the dog, and the comic books upon which they are based is always the tail. And that is because of money. The potential for earning more money than the entire comic book industry has earned in its entire 80-plus year history, over the course of one summer with like two movies, say Fantastic Four and Superman, for example. The former dwarfs the latter. You're never going to make enough comic money off of selling and producing comic books. What you do is help keep the franchises alive. So as long as the movie makers, the people who own the studios, who also own the publishers, and I'm referring to Marvel and DC here, as long as they're in the movie business, I think comics are safe as long as we have a means to get them out to the people. And I'm not sure we do. And I'm not sure we have in decades. Our trade paperbacks are doing well now. Ridiculously limited edition hardcovers are doing well because if you print 500 copies, you pretty much know the name of everybody who's going to buy it before you.
Right. But also, it's good for the,
yeah,
those things.
Yeah, absolutely. The statements that Warner Brothers made, that Warner Brothers Discovery made about the breakup, and we should probably explain what that is. And I'm not sure it's really a breakup.
It's a split.
It's a split.
It's again, like, it's weird. Let me take a shot at it. You tell me if I'm on the idea. The idea was that Warner Brothers existed, Discovery and its subsequent TV stuff existed. They came together to form this giant Warner Brothers Discovery. Now they've decided that, you know what, in the middle of that, they took what they had in a good streaming service, nuked the crap out of it, and now they're trying to recover that. So what they're going to do is they're going to take HBO Max, which they killed the name and now give it back. They're going to take that along with the studios, split that off, and then take the TV stuff that they took a little bit from the original Warner Brothers and stuff with Discovery and split that off so that there's like TV stuff and studio stuff.
Yeah, that's about right. And they'll change their mind.
Matching.
I mean, you have to finance this stuff. You have to make stockholders happy, which is not exactly the same as financing, but it really is, because when the company becomes two companies, they split up the stock. So it's the same energy. I have absolutely no faith in anybody being able to manage that company in a productive manner, even if you make it that much smaller. There's just no way you can manage that company because of the revolving doors. Every office in Warner Brothers all over the world, and maybe the galaxy, has revolving doors on each of their inner offices and the front doors. Nothing stays. The people who are making these decisions today, most of them will not be around in 5 years, or they'll be around, they'll just be doing something else. Most will be making more money somewhere else. A few will be working at Burger King. That's how that industry works. It's a sick, diseased industry in a time when we have no idea whether movies can continue to be financed by foreign participation, which is critical to raising money for a $200 million movie, let alone being able to distribute those movies in those foreign countries, because foreign countries are crazy about handling United States of America stuff right now because we won't handle their stuff. And that's what undermines all of this.
And this is how we bring everything back. We definitely will be cyclical in our discussions.
It is. I mean, that's how
it's true. Unfortunately,
that's how it works.
Unfortunately, it is. Well, that is the news. That is our opening segment for you folks.
Well, wait a minute. Can I drop one more thing in that?
You can. You can. Yeah.
I want to note that this Warner Brothers Discovery thing just dropped the fact that they're working on a Wonder Woman movie script.
I did see that.
Yes. And we have no idea the entire fate of everything Warner Brothers Discovery, as you can see from the press release, which announced the split up, everything is dependent upon the success of the Superman movie. This movie. Every everything is dependent upon that.
True.
I if James Gunn were the most nervous guy on earth right now, certainly without a Hispanic last name, I would certainly understand that.
I understand. I agree with you. I'm also excited, and I am trying not to get too hyped, and I am trying not to put the entire fate of the world on the Kryptonian shoulders. But I understand your point.
It's not on the Kryptonian humans' shoulders. It's on the dogs.
Well, the dog, I have no doubt that the dog will shine like a rocket. There will be no question.
Absolutely.
This is all about the dog. Okay.
It's all about the dog. The movie is all about the dog.
Whatever the Supergirl is, Streaky's coming. So.
And Comet.
Streaky and Comet's weird.
I thought it was weird at the time, and I was like 10.
All right. So now we've talked about DC. Let's bring in a couple of guests who have both done some amazing work for DC as well as other things. And I've been wanting to have them on this show since we started the show. I'm so thrilled that we finally have been able to nail it down and they're on together. So please, everybody, welcome Morgan Beem and Jorge Corona. Hi. Hang on, you're unmuted. You're unmuted now. Hi.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the show.
There were some covers in there that I haven't seen in ages.
Yeah,
so
you
that
put some
was
stuff from the archives.
That is what I try to do. I try to make sure we make you remember the halcyon days of our youth and bring all of everything together.
Does anybody know what the word halcyon means?
I have looked it up. I think I'm using it
That's
correctly.
for days, but I don't know the meaning.
There's a hotel here that is called the Halcyon, but that's about it.
Mark Guggenheim wrote a book called Halcyon. I know that. So I have a lot of things I want to talk to you guys about. Can we start out with what does the setup of two comic artists living in the same house look like? Because I think that's fantastic.
Well, fortunately, we actually rent a studio here in Denver, so it's the studio is in fact the two of us and then 4 other comic artists.
Yeah.
Right. I know you guys worked in the studio. Do you spend most of your workday at the studio?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we got pretty good
I love
early
that.
on about separating, kind of the studio and work life. Well,
Oops.
You're,
I think you're muted again, I think.
we can't hear you. Hang on.
Okay, continuing our tribute to Buster Keaton.
Let me try and adjust their stuff. No, I can't do it. I'm getting no. Can you hear us? This is fantastic. I love it. The best part about being on the internet is that no. They've lost. They're going to come out and come back. Good.
It's really hard for me to worry about EMP as something that's going to take us all out when we can't even do the internet right.
Well, I mean, it'll definitely. Well, see, the thing is, the destruction comes easier than the actual execution of
That's
the excellent.
that's true.
Um,
I had a lawyer, a lunatic lawyer friend. I was actually dating his secretary.
All right.
Sorry
No.
about-
Oh,
Can you hear us?
Better.
Hear you.
we can hear you.
Yeah,
I was all set to tell assorted stories, so you came back just in the nick of time.
Just in the nick of time. Yeah,
So
sorry.
you-
I'm not sure what happened there.
Yeah.
That's weird. No worries. So you guys work at a studio. You leave house in the morning or whatever. Like, I don't expect artists to, work 9 to 5. There's usually some sort of wiggle in there.
I wish.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wish.
We break it down usually more by like what we have to finish in the day, and like if it's a good day, sometimes you'll get done a little early, and if it's a bad day, you're at the studio real late.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just saying that the studio was important for us for almost opposite reasons. I don't work well at home because I have a really hard time getting started. I just always feel like it's like, oh, there's dishes to be done or stuff to do or whatever. And Jorge has a really hard time turning off at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So we both kind of needed like a hard line, like this is the living space and this is the working space.
I love that. I think that's fantastic. And that is, the fact that you guys answered in that way is like 1,000% the reason why I wanted to talk to you guys together. I think it's fantastic. Like it's important because we live in this world where you guys are making this amazing art and telling these stories, but you're people. You have, there are things in your lives that are outside of that. And while the public is presented with this fantastic piece of art, there's a person behind it who, needs to do the dishes or stop working and go home and, give his wife a kiss on the cheek,
Yep.
Well, and also it's really great. We also love the studio. We obviously get along great and it's fun to work together, but I think it's positive for our relationship not to spend 24 hours a day with just us.
Yeah.
Right.
Also,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, going to work and seeing other people and talking to other people is also like pretty
Yeah, no.
healthy.
It's a good separation
Yeah.
of duties.
Can you give a shout out to your other studio mates because they're on?
Yeah, so we have a great
Wow.
studio. So our other studio mates, obviously it's the two of us. They include Rye Hickman, Jeremy Lawson, David Stoll, and Sarah Stern.
Awesome.
Wow.
I love those people.
They're
It was
moved actually, but still studio mate in our hearts.
Yeah.
yeah.
I got to tell you, if not for deadlines, I would never get the dishes done.
That's who I am also.
Never. If I have a short deadline and I'm supposed to be writing something and I haven't thought about it, my first drafts are always in my head.
Mhm.
I can write while I'm doing the dishes.
Yeah.
I can't draw while I'm doing the dishes.
Yeah. No. It's complicated.
My house is never as clean as when I'm close to a deadline.
Yeah. No. That's,
Here too. Our house could be condemned, but only from the inside.
We joke all the time in the studio. We talk about how everybody is either a front end stressor or a back end stressor. A lot of it has to do with how comfortable you are with procrastination. But you either get a deadline and you start stressing immediately right at the start, like, oh my God, I've got to do this much and I've got to make sure I don't run out of time. Or you're like, oh, that's plenty of time, I'm fine. And then you stress at the very end.
Yep.
Jorge is a front end stressor and I am a back end stressor.
Yeah.
And we're still
Oh, that's
50-50 too.
That's really nice. You fit together. You cover each other's needs. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
Or it means that at any given point, everyone's stressed,
Yeah.
or like someone's stressed. So like however you want to see it.
When it works, it's perfect. Yeah. We had to
Cool.
get the fundamental, like, I don't understand how you run your business, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That took us maybe a year or two.
You have your rhythm, I have mine. It's a different thing. We're doing the same, but it's
Yeah.
in different ways.
The coolest thing about deadline appreciation that I used to be on radio, and I mean the SquadCast is the same thing though. At 12 o'clock, my show went on the air, whether I was there or not.
Yeah.
And if I wasn't there, there was a chance I would not be welcomed back. So, 12 o'clock, I'm there. I'm doing the show. And as an editor, I've been able to get all my get back on that. It's like I had to do it.
Yeah. No, and it's I mean, it's also that thing that it's like better get it done. So don't. It doesn't matter. You know, you need to get it done by a certain point. It doesn't matter if you're like stressing about that deadline at the beginning or at the end. As long as you get it there by the finish line, you're good.
Well, and luckily at this point in both our careers, we also like have a pretty fundamental understanding of like what we can get done in a day realistically. Which it takes you a little while to suss out. In the beginning, you had to like eat some humble pie when you didn't get that right.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, if your editor comes and says this is the deadline, you can realistically be like, oh, I can do that, or I can't, and just kind of know how the flow works.
There's a phrase that we use fairly commonly that applies best to deadline, to making your deadline. That phrase is "shit happens." So that with the best of intentions, you can still blow a deadline.
Yeah.
I once risked getting fired because I extended by a month, which meant we missed an issue, a colorist's deadline because she was getting breast cancer surgery. And it was a mini-series, and I did not want to interrupt the mini-series with a different colorist. Yeah. And also I wanted to stand behind my talent.
Yeah.
So I said, nope, we're just going to skip that month. And of course, the people above me at DC went apeshit. And I don't blame them. But it's like, she's got breast cancer. Screw you.
Yeah. Good on
and
you,
finally they realized it.
Yeah, especially again, it's that kind of duality of what we do that is specifically like if we're doing licensed work is people do care about the creative team, but it's also to a certain extent it's just a product that needs to come out at a certain point. So it's like, you have to balance those two, but like I feel like those are decisions that you can make based on what's happening. So that makes me happy that you went that way because it was important and it wasn't like suddenly you couldn't do it. It's just like there's a reason. Let's work through this. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like Bob mentioned in the beginning. It's like you have to remember that like people are also people.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing their best or whatever, but also it's like I think it's an awesome choice because it's like I'm not going to take a job from a woman who's literally going through cancer treatment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not. It's like it's certainly not her fault, but it's also it's wrong from an aesthetic standpoint.
Yeah,
because it's a miniseries. If it was a regular, ongoing, monthly, I might think differently of it because that stuff happens. But for like 12 issues or 6 issues or even 4 issues, particularly 4 issues, you want the same books.
Yeah.
Speaking of, getting the deadline done, I'm pretty certain that I remember when this was finished. And I want to talk about some of your stuff individually as well, but I'm pretty sure I remember when you finished this. Is this the picture of the giant stack of pages that you're like finally done? That was like a year ago, and now it's finally here. It came out in March. You Belong Here by Morgan Beem and Sarah Miller. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about this book and what it meant and what it comes from?
Yeah. So this book is near and dear to me. It is Sarah Miller. It is her debut graphic novel as a writer. And for those of you who don't know, Sarah Miller has been a fabulous editor at DC for a long time and has been my very good friend. And this book, she really poured her heart into, and it really meant so much to me that she chose me to be, her co-creator on this. And this had been in the works. I mean, before I even started working for DC, she told me, I have this idea. It's just in fruition. I think at the time she was getting, her master's in writing. And she was like, but, you did this illustration once. It was this kind of like blue little sketch. And she told me, she's like, I have that print and I have it hung in my cubicle because that's the art I want for my book. So that was super meaningful. You Belong Here is a young adult slice of life book. It follows our character Essie in her last year of high school. And it just kind of deals with all the upheaval that happens to your life at that point as an American, right? Is you your friends are all leaving, your relationships are ending, you're potentially moving, miles and miles and miles away from your home and family. And it's just kind of that like first big kind
As
of.
an American student.
As an American student. As an American high schooler. I know that experience is not universal to every high school outside of the States.
Venezuelan high school, very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But moving away, generally.
Yeah.
And all your friends are
I've seen the
moving
movies.
away.
I know how you guys do it.
That was for you, man.
Yeah.
But it is, and I think anybody who has gone through American high school, I think can relate to that point where it's kind of the first time in your formative life that everything, for a lot of people, some people have moved before that, different things, but where things are really changing. So that's kind of what that book seeks to encompass, is that you are graduating from some of your sheltering from childhood and some of your and things, and having to start dealing with sort of adult problems. But the book, she's a doozy. She's about 250 pages. I, as Bob mentioned, worked traditionally. So it is always really satisfying when a book, especially that long, is done, because you're left just with a big stack of paper. And it's sort of like surveying your kingdom. You're like, yes, the fruits of my labor.
That that's fantastic. It's got to be like it's got to be interesting. And one of the themes that I wanted to talk about tonight, you kind of already started to bring up, and I'm going to bring in a guest speaker who is going to. It's not a real person. Well, he's real. He's a real dead person. But,
Okay.
but I thought this was appropriate, and it kind of asks the question that we're going to talk about.
Like intervention.
This is a sort of impertinent question. I wanted to ask you if you have ever cast a friend instead of the right person for the part.
Frequently.
Have you regretted it?
Frequently.
Would you do it again?
Yes.
Do you think
Because I don't regard art as of prime importance. I already told you I prefer every other loyalty in life to art. I hate the romantic conception of art as taking precedence over anything. I think it's the last thing to be considered, always. Certainly would regard friendship as more important than my art. I have great respect for people who do regard their art in that way. And I think they are probably the most valuable artists. So I'm not defining what an artist ought to be. I'm just saying the kind of artist I am.
Good for him.
Ooh,
So-
that's a great quote.
Isn't it a great quote? But
That is brilliant.
it is brilliant. Now, Jorge, you guys mentioned that Rye Hickman's in your studio, and I know you've worked with Rye a lot. Love their work. But you've also worked with some other people quite a bit. Very tall,
Eric,
bearded guy.
The studio. We're working together for a while too.
But also, I'm also saying, you've worked with Scotty Young quite a bit, and you guys have a working relationship. What's it like when you work collaborating with people often? Do you find it to be positive? Obviously you keep going back to it. There's money involved, which is good, but what's good about it?
I guess if we go to the fact that so obviously there's two directions. Either people who I was friends before we worked together, or people who we became friends after we worked together.
That's a good two distinctions. There's only two.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So again, I've definitely worked a lot with people who have become friends in the process, and because of that, we also keep going. Because again, this industry, we always talk about this. It's only two. From one, it could be from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 people who are working together on the same project consistently for X amount of time. But then you become very involved because again, everyone's playing with whatever the other person did, right? Like whoever wrote the script, the line artist is going to be playing with what they did, the colorist is going to be playing with what the line artist did, and the letterer is going to come in, and you have everyone touching everyone's toys basically. So if you don't play along well, then there's a tension there that you don't necessarily want to go back to working with that person, because again, we don't play well together. But
Tension in comics. Never heard of
yeah,
it.
yeah, especially yeah. So again, you and we as a creative, it depends. Kind of like the quote, it depends on the kind of artist you are. Depends on the kind of creative you are. There are artists who are like, hey, I did my thing. You take it over. You do whatever you want. There are artists who are like, hey, touch it only in the way that I want you. Yeah, exactly. So you have to find the people that are going to complement the way you work and the way you feel your work should be treated, basically. So yeah, when you see me working again and again with people, usually that means that there is a good rapport. And then when it's close people, like like you mentioned, Rye, you mentioned Sarah, we were always also in the same
Sure.
studio. Scotty, we started with Middle West, and then we've become real good friends after that whole project. And it's just like there's a comfort in going back to those kind of people, and then knowing, it's just fitting well together. And then the fact that we're friends outside of just working partners means that you can have conversations that I think at the end of the day do improve, the final product, because there's a trust, and there's a connection there that is easier to communicate, other than trying to just send notes over an email or something like that. It's just a conversation with a friend and being like, hey, what do you think if we do this? What do you think if we do that? How would you better do this if I from what you have from me or what you get from me kind of situation.
And less room for misunderstanding also, because
you
know each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's a camaraderie there, I guess.
But
the thing about I'm sorry, go please.
No, I was just gonna say, and generally, because not everybody is everybody's cup of tea, and that's fine. But if working with somebody is like pulling teeth, it just, there's not that much money in our industry. It's just not worth it. It's just too much point. You're gonna be like, I'd rather work at Starbucks, Luckily, I'll say that I find fortunately that comics, especially when you meet people in person, like at shows or things, the vast majority of people working comics are like really chill. Like they're like really pretty fun, awesome people. Like it seems pretty easy to form friendships in this industry, which I think is, it's not the same in every industry. So
I mean, I feel like there's also a thing that is we all started as fans. Yeah, I don't think anyone who ended up working in comics didn't start as a fan.
And we all started hustling the same way. It's a benevolent hustle. The comics community is a small community, really, even though it's expanded greatly, which is wonderful, and much more inclusive, which is even better because we get better stories. It's still a small community, and if you're not working out okay with somebody, and that happens, it's creative, that happens. You still want to be friends with the person.
Yeah,
you're still going to run into that person at conventions, and you're going to be there sitting across from them at some convention dinner or what have you. It's part of your life.
Yep.
And that's what makes this business a good business.
Yeah.
It's really the best part. I have friends I have made in the comics business a half century ago that are still very, very close friends today, those who are still alive.
Yep. No, and I think to what you're saying too is it's not an industry that, unless you're like a specifically kind of auteur kind of situation, you're never alone. So you're always working in teams, and we experienced this when we started working in this industry, and now that we have X amount of years of experience in this, and we get to talk to people who are just starting, is what we also try to tell them is the people that are like starting with you, going back to the hustle that you're saying, is
the benevolent hustle.
Yeah, the benevolent hustle. Yeah, I like that term. Is like some of those people are gonna maybe get an opportunity faster than you, but eventually those people are also gonna need to find you because they know they can rely on you for X, Y, or Z, and then they bring you up with them into whatever next step they got to. And I feel like we've run into that situation many a times where it's like, yeah, like you the more people you know in this industry, and the more you get to know people, the more you get to, talk to them, become friends, see what your interests are, someone is going to pull you up because someone is going to need what you do. And that networking happens in a very
organic kind of way.
Kind of like organic, comfortable way.
Yes, that's very true. That's very true.
That's also the thing about comics is like not only just your peers, but like I very rarely do I see anybody kind of going up the ladder of comics who isn't trying to pull somebody up with them. And some of that has to do, with like friendship reliability, but also just like Jorge said.
And would you regret it? All the time.
Maybe.
But it's still.
Yes.
Not only are we fans of the mediums, but we're all storytellers, right? We all love story. And so I think that's also a thing in the industry is that like, I could be trying to hustle and do my career or whatever, but I also really want to read your story.
Yeah.
Like, and so that's, I think, why it's easy sometimes to pull somebody up with you, because it's like, okay, I'm shooting for this, but also like, I really want to read your story. So like, let's see how we can like both get on up here.
Yeah.
Which is cool. It's a cool thing about comics.
I have worked in all aspects, just about all aspects of the entertainment industries all my life, usually 5 or 6 of them simultaneously because I'm insane. But aside from that, let me tell you, and this is a very informed opinion, the folks in the comics community are wonderful compared to the rest of the entertainment industry, which can be and often is horrible, full of horrible people. I think it's partially because we in comics are a little bit further removed from lawyers, and most of the talent doesn't work across the desk from the person who signs the paycheck.
Yeah.
But those are wonderful freedoms. But this is such a wonderful business to be in, just from a friendship point of view.
Yeah.
We agree.
I want to come back to something that you said, Morgan. We're storytellers. I mean, everybody who's in this is, I feel, people who are truly involved in comics for the medium of itself, as opposed to some of the ancillary shiny aspects of it, are because of story. So what drew you guys individually to comics storytelling, to telling your stories this way?
I mean, kind of like Jorge said, I think just being fans of the medium. I grew up reading comics. I was a 90s manga kid. Like sitting in the Barnes & Noble reading. I'm sure the staff hated me, but like reading for hours. I started with manga, and then in like later high school and college, got really into American comics, and it was just. I was always a kid who I read a ton of books. I was like a Goosebumps, Animorphs, like whatever kid growing up, and I just always loved stories. I say I come from a family of storytellers only because if you came to dinner with my family, everybody, unfortunately, especially if you come to a few dinners, they just want to tell you like the same 10 stories over and over again. They really everybody just really enjoys the nature of telling a story. And I grew up with that too. And then, just something about comics, the uniqueness of the medium of, I think you both have a little bit of that, like where you read novels and some of the pacing and some of the imaginative stuff is in your head, but you have a little bit more, a little bit more steak and potatoes, I guess, than just a novel, because you do have the art aspect. I don't know, I was just obsessed with it. And so then all in my youth, I doodled and I drew little comics. My friends and I, would like go over to each other's houses and draw little comics. And so since I was 13, it was like, this is what I want to do. That sounds really cliche because I feel like that's like the classic artist story, but I did veer off for a minute as an adult. Like my undergrad was not, I went to college and it was not art related. I think because I'm afraid of that commitment, which turned out to be a lot better for me though, because I was like, was like a real weird kid. I was a really weird kid. I was like an aggressively awkward kid. And I do think that if I had...
There are a large percentage of us who were aggressively awkward kids.
But I do think going to a normal college and having to interact with a bunch of normal... Not art school.
I see.
And having to interact with a bunch of like accountants and business majors and people who are my dear friends today, but who like not only were like regular, but also like had their shit together, like socially, financially, in ways that I did not, was really good for me because it forced me to like grow up. And now, you know, I can like have conversations with people at parties and not people be like, you know, so that, you know, as a human being.
You painted a beautiful picture of the art student. But yeah.
No, I'm just saying it's how I would be as an art student.
So Jorge,
like wrapped myself in sort of my art nerd bubble, and I would have never had to learn certain life lessons myself. Not to say that everybody who goes to art school is that way.
Absolutely fair.
Although having gone, because my undergrad was regular, and then I did because I make really good financial decisions. Did go to art school for graduate school. All the stereotypes about art school are true.
How dare you? Yeah.
So Jorge, growing up in a non-American high school in Venezuela, how did you get here?
So I guess so.
And I meant here, not necessarily in Denver, but like to this point.
Yeah. No, we can talk about the immigration process any other day.
Please, any other day. Thank you.
Yeah, really. Please. We started with it on the show, and that's
you can
it.
go back and rewatch. It wasn't good.
Yeah.
Since I was a kid, again, same thing. Kind of like I loved drawing. I realized that I was good at it, and that was kind of like my way to express myself in any other way.
Not to be too cliches, but
again. But at the same time, my first kind of exposure to what eventually would translate into how my love to comics came to be was that I just loved animation. And then whether it was watching cartoons, you know, and starting with something like the Super Friends or, you know, stuff like that, kind of like show me what the superhero world was and the stories were, and it wasn't until later on that I was visiting some family and I ran into what a comic was, because my concept of comics wasn't anything more than the comic strips, you know, on the newspaper. And it wasn't until like later on that I realized I was obsessed with the Batman the animated show. I completely obsessed. Like, again, it was my first exposure to like, oh, this is how you can tell a little bit more of a grown-up story, you know, with this character. And obviously I was obsessed with the movies and stuff like that. But then at a grocery store, I can't remember where now, but it was on a family trip outside of Venezuela. I saw the comic book rack, and then I saw a comic that had on the back, it was actually turned around, it had all the VHS of Batman the animated show. And I was like, oh, I love that show. So I grabbed the book, and then I turned it around, and it's a Batman comic. And it was Kelly Jones Batman, and my brain just exploded. I was like, wait, you can do this? So going back,
didn't look like the guy on TV.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. It was it was a huge contrast, but I loved it.
And it was in English the first time you picked it up.
Oh yeah. No, yeah. It was all in
Points
English.
for days.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I love it. And the joke and every other issue, you would have the ears being cut. Anyway, but the thing was that I realized then that most of the characters that I had fallen in love through cartoons and movies and stuff like that also had books. And because I love to draw, I was always trying to recreate what I was seeing on TV, but also that's motion, that's different thing. But what I saw on a comic book page, that one, obviously not to the degree that it would be, you know.
You could one-man show.
Yeah. But I could trace that. I could try to draw that, and it would look relatively similar to what I was having as the final product in my hands. So that's how slowly everything, you know, devolved into me obsessing, because it was also before I knew English, or so I was getting all these American comics without necessarily knowing what the story was about. So I was just going through the pictures and trying to put the story together that way, and also figuring out how I could draw that way. And that informed a lot of my, teenage years. Later, obviously, just like in the States, anime and manga took over. So that was a different route, and I discovered other ways of storytelling. And in Venezuela, also, we had a lot of import from comics from from Europe. And so I got exposed to, Black Sat, Corto Maltese, and other ways of telling stories through comics. And that, seeing the landscape and seeing what you could do and the many different ways that you could do it, it just became an obsession with me. So I could, every time that I could, I would just collect, and read. And I found the one bookstore back home that would import comics. I would get the comics there, but they also would bring Wizard magazine by that time. So even if I wasn't, because obviously they would bring mostly, DC, Marvel, big titles, Spider-Man, Batman, stuff like that. And then I would grab Wizards magazine, and I would see, whatever was happening with Cliffhanger, and whatever was happening with Mignola doing Hellboy, Watchmen, stuff like that. That I eventually later on kind of had to go back and read and kind of complete what I was reading about. But yeah, it was that obsession that eventually kind of got me here.
And so did you go to art school here in America? Did you go to art school?
Yeah, so that's how we met. So my undergrad was graphic design back home. So I worked as a graphic designer, and I worked for also video as an art director for video production companies. And it wasn't until later through the Fulbright scholarship, I got to come to the States, and that's when we met in Savannah,
so we met,
Georgia.
in at SCAD in grad school.
You're SCAD kids.
Yeah, we're
Really?
part of the Savannah kids.
There's many of us.
Yeah.
I thought that was the case. I just wasn't. I didn't want to.
Our entire studio is SCAD kids.
Yes, that is.
Well, I understand. They're good people.
We're so
Listen,
sorry.
I was going to ask.
you had
how
good
you
teachers
met.
too.
We did. We actually had really good teachers. We were still some of our
and we
friends
were
today.
very lucky. The years I would spend there.
We were lucky that our year, right? So the students who we all started at the same time, we're all powerhouses. I think half of us are either working in comics or in animation, and everybody just was extremely talented. But in that year, everybody also just wanted it so bad. Everybody just worked their ass off, and all anybody wanted to do was get better and get to that next thing or whatever. We were really lucky because that was the whole class. We all pushed each other quite a bit.
Yeah.
There's a reason why artists, most artists, I think, don't like to look back at their older stuff.
Yeah.
Because they have that need to progress, to move forward, to get better by their own definition.
Yeah.
And the one thing that most of us in the comics racket have in common is most all of us all have OCD. So you can say what you had just said, and I think most of the folks in the business and most of the fans who follow the business totally get it. Totally get it.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's there's no one's gonna be worse to a worse critic than yourself.
Yes.
And I feel that's not always the case, but that tends to be the case with people who know they not that who know they're good, who end up being good because they never think they're good.
Yeah.
Enough. So that tends to happen a lot.
Yeah, and the ones who really know it, a couple of them are people that you would love to work with because they're great, but you don't have the energy.
Yes, also that. Also that.
All right, so I brought up a I brought up a Morgan book. I want to bring up a Jorge book, and this one, this one was really, really interesting, and I want to talk about a particular issue, obviously. So you already probably know what we're talking about. So,
Oh, okay, yeah.
So in Ain't No Grave, first of all, I have a friend who's a comic book reader. He's not in the industry. He's just he's a really good friend of mine. He loves comics. I handed him Middle West.
Okay.
And I'm like, because he's a Marvel DC guy. He likes Ninja Turtles, but not really. He doesn't really stretch out for the indies. And I handed him Middle West, and he was obsessed. And so therefore he's become a Jorge Corona fan. So he's read all of the stuff following that. But Ain't No Grave, he was kind of ahead of me as it was coming out. And so there's a silent issue here in this book. Can you talk about what it was like having to put that together? How much instruction were you given? How, was it panel by panel? How did that work for you?
No, so
by the way,
yeah.
it was executed perfectly. It was really well done. A very excellent silent issue.
That weirdly became both Scotty's and I favorite issue. Yeah, that's issue 4, and the topic of that one was because, again, if you've read the book or if you haven't read it, it's the 5 stages of grief. So the 4th issue is depression, and we kind of knew that we wanted to make something different with depression as an issue, and the idea came up from Scotty because, again, he mapped out the whole story, and he was like, hey, how do you feel if we do that 4th issue completely silent? And I'm again, like I told you, I learned how to read comics from just looking at the images, so I love that. And yeah, and in terms of the script, what because, again, this is Scotty's and I 3rd book together by this point, so we talk about during the whole creation process, we talk between each other a lot, and we knew some of the things that we wanted to show in that issue, and then Scotty came in and gave me basically almost a progression of what happens from, or like where our character writer, where does she get from here to here, what does she see here, but then there was no necessarily panel description unless it was a specific moment that he needed me to show. So the rest was just trying to develop a coherent way that path could be read, basically. It's funny because, again, it is the 4th issue of the series, and by that point we had been talking about what we wanted, each issue to be, and Scotty gives me panel by panel scripts, but not necessarily too descriptive. Like, we trust each other that we both know what we're gonna do on both our ends. And that issue was just another example of that. I just didn't have to worry about leaving space for dialogue, basically. But at the same time, we knew if I needed to add panels or what panels or how I wanted to lay out a page. That was up to me. Scotty was just making sure that the progression of the character's emotion was, what it needed to be, what he was seeing in that issue. So again, even though that's an issue that, yeah, it ended up being, again, except for the last panel where you have the only word, it didn't differentiate too much from the way we were doing the rest of the book, because, again, by that point, Scotty and I just kind of worked together that way.
Yeah. And Nate needs a break every once in a while.
Yeah, yeah, he loved that. He absolutely loved that. But yeah, no, it was wild, especially, like, talking about Nate. I was working on that issue when he was lettering issue 1. So in that issue, because we have the guitar player and
sure.
I was just drawing the musical notes when writer starts following the music basically down the line. Nate was seeing those pages coming in as he was lettering issue 1, and in issue 1 we had a sequence where you have people chanting a song. So he took the panels from that issue that had the musical notes and incorporated them in issue 1. So again,
Snake's genius.
He is absolutely. He's great.
An absolute genius. But like that's the kind of thing where we were talking about when you
the
find
collaboration.
Yes, when you find a group that you work well together with, that is invaluable.
My favorite was on the I think it was a live stream you did with Nate, Scotty, and you talking about and Nate talked about how in every Jorge book he tries to find a different balloon shape. Which is a new balloon shape. It's like a challenge. And it was just so funny because I remember him just being like, "I'm running out of balloon shapes."
Yeah, he's running out of shapes.
But I thought that was really cute.
Geez. Comics is a visual medium. We keep on saying that, and people go, "Oh yeah, you're right." But the fact of the matter is, you have to think and act visually, and everybody involved in that team effort has to be on the same page in terms of thinking visually. For a writer to not write, trust the artist to get the story across the plate, that's an act of faith that comes out of your work experience.
Yeah.
And that's the most beautiful way to collaborate. The most important word in collaboration is trust.
Yeah.
I was wondering what the word in collaboration was, another word that was in there, and then it was not in there. It's just implied.
Just hidden,
No, but it's funny because again, Scotty and I, we became friends working through Middle West, and obviously we've hit it with we've hit it together to do more books. But we talk consistently about that especially because we're doing mostly creator-owned books. Mm-hmm. It's our books, it's our stories, it's having our fun with the medium, and we really go back to that is like it's just like having a group of friends, and you're just making things up, and it feels like playing when you get to that point with a group of people, and we've been very lucky that we got to know each other, and then we got to work together that way, because it is just like it's not as a restrictive process. It's a process that each of us and I'm talking. I mean, obviously I've had this specifically with that team, which is Scotty, Nate, and Sean. Is like we just vibe, and it's like, oh, I'll send John my pages, and he'll do something with colors, and it's like I would never think of that. I remember at the very beginning of Middle West, actually, we had a few sample pages that I've done. It was the first few pages that I've done, and then we sent it to John, and Scotty and I had been talking about it. And again, we were all starting to learn how to work with each other. And we gave Jean a bunch of directions. It's like, hey, this is what we're looking at. This is kind of like what we were thinking. And Jean did a page, and we were like, hey, man, it's weird. It's not working. And then he just like, hey, guys, I just did what I would do. And he sent us that page, and we were like, never listen to us again. Yeah. Like, go.
He lit it on fire.
You know to do this. Like, again, and it is kind of that realization when you find a group like that you can just have fun that way, because it's like, listen, I'll say something, but most of the time I'm gonna be wrong. You do you. Like it's fun.
Yeah, I mean John's work there was just unworldly.
Yeah, it's one of the colors. Yeah, no.
The fact that man does not have an Eisner is a crime.
It is a crime. It's absolutely.
Listen, Eisner categories and any other category for letters and colorists is completely bizarre.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. I want to part of why I was hoping we could talk about this, like, you guys are a married couple, and you work in the same industry, and not I would say most people don't have their partner in the same industry as them. How does that work for you guys? Do you guys struggle with it at times? Does it something that it's just normal? Is it something that you enjoy?
For us, I think it's an asset.
Yeah.
Jorge and I mean, every couple has their dynamic or whatever. Jorge and I,
Sure.
we communicate pretty much the same way. So we're both just like pretty chill. We're not people who fight a lot. We don't whatever. And the nice thing about being in the industry is that, we're married to each other, but we're both a little married to the job. We
Sure.
met in grad school doing it. It's our passions. And so some of that means that it's a lot of long hours.
Yeah.
It's still long hours, but especially starting out, Jorge was a Fulbright scholar. So at the end of grad school, he had to go back to Venezuela for a set amount of time before he could move here. And we were dating during that time, long distance. And so he would come up to visit, and I would have friends and people who would be like, your boyfriend's been in town for 2 months and I've never met him. Or this, kind of thing. I remember my mother pointed out once, she was like, it's a good thing you guys are in the same industry, because she was like, you guys don't like go on a ton of dates or do things even though you haven't seen each other in a bunch of time. And that would make some people mad. But the difference is that we were both, especially in the beginning there, right? We were both trying to get careers off the ground. So it was like, we were both working other jobs or doing whatever we had to do. Or I was working a day job and trying to get books off. Jorge was on 4 books. It was insane. So it was just like, you should have any time. And I think if you were dating or married, especially now, and even now, we love what we do. So it's fine. I wouldn't have it any other way, but we work 10-hour days, 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And if you were married to somebody who had a 9 to 5, I could see how that could get hard. They might resent that, you're not there all the time, or you're not going on date nights, or you can't always be readily available for, especially if you're on a monthly book, you're probably not going to be able to take a 2-week vacation whenever you want, because that book has to come out every month. And so some of that I think helps, because since we're both in the industry, we understand it, where it's hey, I've got 3 months and I'm not going to be able to do fucking anything. It's
yeah.
In 6 months, that will be me. And so I think that helps. And then part of it, not to sound totally lame, but is we're both kind of obsessed with the job medium. And so it's fun, when one of us is oh, I want to pitch this book that I'm going to try to write, a lot of our date nights will be workshopping the story together, or, it's nice that you can be that you have a partner that you trust openly, so we can come to each other and be oh, I got offered this book, or I'm trying to do this thing. Do you think this is a good business path? Or, and because we understand the business, we can consult each other.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes that closeness, and again, because we are together all the time, but for us, it's not a problem. For some couples, it might be, I don't know. But for us, I think it's been an asset, because we're both all in on this thing, and that's an asset to our relationship, not a detriment that it might be. The real bummer is that neither one of us has good health insurance. And income stability is so-so. But other than that, it's been pretty great.
The great part about this is that if one of you is having a problem, and it's a very technical problem or very specific problem, the other one is more likely to get it, to understand and know intuitively how to be helpful, or at least to show your concern. If you're at a convention together, that's the best of all possible worlds, because you get to have your cake and eat it too. You have immediate refuge with your spouse in the hotel room, and then you have this convention, So I love that.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, and again, it is that thing that we both we still consume comics and
regularly,
or stories like you said. It ends up coming up to stories. So we love this. We not necessarily love the same things, but we love how would you say it? Basically, we have different tastes, which is normal, obviously.
Sure.
but
at the same time, similar passions. So there's a comic book that I would read that she would never read. I, pass it over to her, and it's like, hey, I think you like that. Same that way. It's like, hey, I saw this movie, a movie that I would never watch, and then she's like, let's watch this, and then we kind of like talk about it, because again, it is. You have to be in love with comics in this job. I don't think
Well, it's a language.
Yeah.
If you can't appreciate the medium, I'm not saying you have to be a practitioner necessarily. You understand the language because you've hung out with this person for so long, and you're familiar with it. Then you can be a supportive partner.
Yeah, and
also,
then you get invited to podcasts, and then the two of you can be together at the same time.
Deal, which actually happens with conventions a lot too.
Yeah, that also
is
great.
Get invited, and it'll be like, hey, do you want to bring my partner who also works in the industry? You only have to pay for one.
One hotel room. That's nice. That's a great sell. Great sell.
So that works for me. I helped run the Chicago Comic Con.
And if you don't have to fly, even better.
Oh yeah, well, particularly if you're bringing Chaikin as a guest. But it is a wonderful feeling to be able to make your budget with twice as many guests.
And when one of us maybe spends an exorbitant amount of money on original art, the other one's not going to be as mad, because really it's a win for both of us.
It does work that self-gifts most of the time. It's like, hey, listen, I got you this collection. Don't you like it?
I got you this original page from this artist we both love.
Yes, listen, it works. It does work.
My daughter once at San Diego got me this like 4'12" Fin Fang Foom, which was perfect. And there's no way in the world she would know that was perfect if she weren't my daughter. Except her mother might have known. But that would be it.
Speaking of comics and loving them, I love this book so much. The criminally underrated Crashing.
I agree.
Thank you. Yeah, I also agree. I thought that book was harder than it did, and Matthew, my writer, would cry.
I absolutely this shook me at issue 1, and I talked about it as much as I could for anything. How did you get approached, Morgan, for this project, and what did this mean to you? And how did you approach once you were approached? How did you approach this?
Yeah, so this was actually my first time. I got approached. I can't remember if it was Matthew or Heather who approached me first. I think it was Matthew.
Heather Antos was the editor.
Yeah, so Heather Antos is the writer, Matthew Klein is the writer, and Heather Antos and Matthew Klein are like BFFs. And so again, in my catalog of working with debut writers, this was technically, Matthew had written a bunch of screenplays. He had written for theater a bunch before, but this was his first debut in comics, which actually I think being a playwright helped him so well in the comic medium, because I think he was able to understand like the timing you have. But anyway, but I think it was Matthew reached out to me, or maybe them together. I can't quite remember. And I do remember in the beginning, I got this pitch where he was like, it's a kind of medical drama, but like set in the world of superheroes, and there's a bunch of superhero stuff. And obviously knowing my art, I remember being like, I'm the artist you want for this book?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
And so at first I was thinking like, man, they're probably just shooting this email out to like anybody who's available. Like it's not, because I didn't see myself being Perry Barrow's concept. But the nice thing was that once I jumped on a call, and at that point it was both Matthew and Heather, they expressed to me that they had read some of my previous work, and actually what they really wanted was, they were like, it's not so much, they're like, superheroes are present in this, but it's not a superhero book. They're like, very much it's an interpersonal drama. And they were like, we read your work, we really like your form of storytelling, and then also your sort of emotional expressiveness of characters. And then the nice thing was that I was still having a hard time, because again, previous to this, I had worked on Swamp Thing, but again, obviously in the superhero world, but especially the version of Swamp Thing I did, not really, it's not a Keeps and Tights book. It's not a superhero book. Right. And predominantly, I mean, I love superhero books. I am obviously not opposed to working in the future, but I'm not your classic superhero look when it comes to art. And one of the nice things was that I think my brain really got hung up with that in the beginning. And so we had some back and forth, and finally both of them sat me down and they were like, no, you don't understand that we want a you book. Like, this doesn't need to be, somebody in a cape and tights. This can be however you envision superheroes or however you envision this drama, like, go nuts. And I think once I kind of had that breakthrough, then it really clicked, and we were kind of off to the races. I'll say that everybody on that team, this was like an extremely well-oiled book, which was super fun for me. Matthew, again, really knew what he was doing. It's so fun for me when I get a script and when I, like at the end of issue 1, really at the end of every issue, because he's really good about leaving kind of like a little hook at the end of each issue, where I read it and I'd be like, wait, what happens next? And I was like, oh, this is a good sign that like I'm intrigued and invested in this story. I will also say, because I know, poor fucking Heather Antos, no fault of her own, is such a controversial person in our industry, and everybody wants to have their 2 cents about her. As somebody who's worked with her now on a couple projects, Heather Antos is a fabulous editor.
Oh yes, she's full disclosure, she's a friend, and I think she's an excellent editor.
She's so great. She's so great. Like, not only does she just have like good insight, like really good, all of her notes, both storytelling and art, were just like, oh wow, that is a really good idea, but not bullshitty, not in the like you're just giving us whatever, but also again, this project ran like a well-oiled machine. She gave like a Monday check-in email every week. Oh my god, it was so great. So anyway, Heather's really great at her job.
The thing about Heather, if we can take just a second, thing about Heather is that she tends to work on a lot of licensed stuff, but the indie stuff that she works on that's not licensed is always phenomenal.
Yes.
This included.
Yeah, and then what was great too is that this was only my second time. So I color for anybody who doesn't know, I color a lot of my own work generally, and this was only my second time working with a colorist. So previously we had been on the Swamp Thing book with Jeremy Lawson, who's actually one of our studio mates, who obviously killed it. But this time, Trina Farrell colored this book, and my God, if I could color everything I've ever done, it would be fabulous. I just feel like she, not only did she kill it just because it just visually, just look at this cover, like it visually looks incredible, and it meshes with like my style really well.
Yep.
But also Tree did this incredible thing where through the narrative, Bob, I'm sure you noticed this while you're reading it, she used the color blue to, so for people who don't know, no spoiler, but this project does deal pretty heavily with addiction. And kind of how addiction can ruin your life, or the things that it can kind of run the gambit. And Tree did this incredible thing with visual storytelling where she used color, and anytime that sort of addictions part of the storyline was ramping up or things were happening, things got a much more saturated blue color. And I feel like it really just kind of solidified those storytelling moments really strongly. And again, it's one of these stories that I have people come to me today who tell me, people who have struggled with addiction and things in the past, and they tell me what the story meant to them. And I feel like that is really distributed to Matthew, who did such a good job of not shying away from a lot of the ugly moments or the intensities of it, but also, dealing with it in a non-stereotypical and still somewhat sensitive manner. So yeah, it was a joy project to work on. I really enjoyed it, and I appreciate you, Bob, for championing it, because I also feel like it should be more read.
It is a great book, and we've I've said many things about it. One of the things about this book that I love so much is that I love this story, and I love everything about it. And there's a massive shock of revelation that happens in this story, so you should read that. Even if that massive shock revelation never happened, it would still be amazing. But that changes everything. But in all the best ways, and it's beautiful. And Hassan is, there are 3 people who should have a shot at winning an Eisner for lettering every year, and Hassan, it's Hassan, Clayton, and Nate, and pretty much that's they're at the top of the game.
Shout out to Haas, because again, I am very fortunate that now, poor Haas, I hope he doesn't hate me, but has lettered numerous projects of mine, and especially
you are blessed.
I'm so blessed. He is really top of the game. Like, I'd say like he and Nate, I think, are like the top people for lettering in my opinion right now. But he does such a good job, especially because some of the other projects he's worked on with me have been some of the ones that I watercolor. lot of times there's this kind of disconnect. It goes okay, but like a lot of times the digital overlaying of the letters with the really traditional and the texture of the paper or whatever sometimes is like a tiny bit jarring. And Haas just knocks it out of the park every time. He's so phenomenal.
He's doing your current run.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's doing my new image book. Haas, if you ever listen to this, I love you. I promise I'll leave more room for lettering, and I'm really sorry. Please
Is that the author book?
Yeah, Author Immortals. Haas is
Cannot wait for that book.
Oh, he's doing such a
looking
good
good.
job.
It's
He's
looking
added
really
some
good.
new sound
I am
effects
very
there.
excited to see Frank's stuff too.
Yeah.
That one, is coming out. I think I can say this here. It's in solicits next month, so it should be out. It'll come out.
Okay, good, because it's not out. Like I know that the trade's coming out in 2026, but there's no individual issues. So we're breaking news here.
So the solicits should be out in July. Spoiler, really sorry if I shouldn't. I think it's fine.
That's fine.
It will be out in July, and the first issue will be out October 1st, and it is an oversized issue. And it's like a fantasy book. It's gonna be really fun. Frank has killed it.
Yeah.
Obviously, again, Haas is lettering it, so it's gonna be good.
So I have another kind of general question. What is, like, we've talked a lot about it, but is there something that if you would to say is like the most rewarding thing about what you do? Like you guys are now, you're adults, you like kind of have a household and stuff like that, and you have this job. What's the most rewarding thing about doing this job?
Oh man, does it just come to meeting the people that read the book on the other end?
The friends we made along the way.
No, it's not the friends that we made along the way. I'm not friends with any. No, but honestly, I think it has had to come down to whenever we go. This is a very isolating job. You can, again, you're stuck in your studio, whatever your situation is, for so many long hours. And when you go outside and you start seeing people who appreciate the stories, the work, and come to you to let you know whatever the books meant to them or whatever the art meant to them. I think that has to be proud, especially because I feel like we were there. We were on the other side, and books have meant that to us, and artists have meant that to us. And suddenly seeing someone telling you that they feel the same way about the things that you are doing, that is a humbling moment that I don't think you get to experience in any other kind of medium.
Yeah.
I mean, we're very lucky in a sense that we're both, this is our career and we're working in comics and this is our livelihood. So there's something about that, but yeah, seeing that reaction from people or seeing people who have such a connection with the books, I think that would be for me the what it is.
I think for me, probably slightly more self-choosing, but it's just I find myself all the time like in the middle, like, and again, comics, as we all know here, and I'm sure most people listening to this, it's a hard job. It can be a hard job. It's a lot of long hours. None of us are making $1 bazillion for the long hours or whatever. But it's so cool. Like, it's so cool that, like, this is what I get to do every day for my job. And I have that moment where, like, I'll be halfway through the day. I'm sure that, like, there's, like, don't get me wrong, it's still a job. So, like, there's some days where you go in where you're like, oh, the last thing I want to do is draw today. But most of the time, it's, like, halfway through, I'll be penciling a page or doing something, and I'll be like, how fucking cool is it that, like, this is, like, that this is my job, that, like, I'm drawing, I'm telling the story, and I'm drawing it, and somebody pays me to do this, and that this is what I get to do full time. Like, I have this sense of fulfillment every day. I guess the job is very, very fulfilling for me. And, before making it in comics, I worked just a bunch of different, day jobs, odd jobs, or whatever, for varying ranges. And comics is the only job that, there are days I certainly, like, maybe don't want to do it all the time, but there's never a day that I, like, dread going to work, like, that I dread doing my job. And I just feel like that's really that's really lucky. I'm really lucky to have that because having friends who work in a lot of other things, that's not the case a lot of times. Sometimes you just have to go to work and you hate everything, and that's life. And so the fact that my job, which I spend the majority of my life doing, fulfills me, I feel very, very privileged to be able to do that.
Also, you're more in control of your life.
Yes.
Than if you're working for somebody else. And that is a very freeing feeling, which is great if you can use that when you use that creatively.
Mm-hmm.
About 1986, I was doing a store appearance in Anchorage, Alaska. Wonderful store. Actually, they held me over. I did two days there. And we had hundreds and hundreds of people. It was just wonderful. And I'm in Anchorage, which is a fabulous city, in Alaska, which is a fabulous state. And I met, for the first time, 3 generations of comics fans. The kid, the daddy, the grandfather. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. I just turned 36, so it was a new experience for me. Now it's 112 years later. And I'll do a convention or a store appearance or what have you.
That was the year that I was born. So
okay, we don't need. I didn't need to know that.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with my age, because I have no choice to be. No other choice to be. But more recently, I've run into 3 generations who have read stuff I've worked on. Not the grandfather who grew up reading, Shazam.
Yeah.
It's the grandfather who grew up reading Grimjack, and it's the first time that was a very, very weird feeling. But the support you get by getting the 3 to talk about their opinions, that's a learning experience about how 3 different generations will look at the same creative work differently because they should. They're 3 different people and 3 different ages. So I love that feedback you get at store appearances and conventions and that sort of stuff. Not only does it help you in your own work, but for me at least, it helps me in my worldview.
Mm-hmm.
I think I understand humanity a little bit better. I hope I do. Because pretty soon our robot masters won't let us.
Oh God.
I say please and thank you to Siri every day so that way I can get put in the nice human zoo.
Selling us out already.
So.
All right, so we're getting close to the end. So we typically do something we haven't done it in a while, but I want to do something. We kind of ask a question today, and it's pop culture related, and I hope Jorge can participate in this because it's definitely pop culture.
Oh, he's gonna know more about pop culture.
Right. So it's just kind of a question of the day, and it's what's your favorite? So let's tonight do what's your favorite sitcom that you grew up, or that it could be current, it could be older.
This is gonna be a cliche.
This is a fun question.
It's Friends for me, and for her.
I hate sitcoms.
There you go.
That's good. Good.
I'm sorry. What? I didn't hear that.
She hates them.
Friends.
This is Friends, and I hate sitcoms.
Yes. Listen. I've seen it a couple times, and there's something real about it. A lot of people who learn English through Friends. At least of my generation, and that is absolutely true. Yeah.
I think
so you hate them.
Yeah, they just
She has a bad relationship with it.
To be fair, so I have an older sister. She's 3 years older than me, and thankfully she and I are best friends now. We're really, really close, but we are night and day in personalities and how we look and everything. We are just opposite humans, and so when you're younger and and somebody's so opposite from you that you just don't understand anything they do, and it kind of enrages you because your frontal lobe hasn't developed all the way. That was my sister and I growing up. We did not get along. And Danielle
and her
and I get along. They peas in a pod. She's obsessed with sitcoms.
She's obsessed with Friends, so we get along fabulously. My sister, great.
All of them. You guys talk about all the sitcoms, and she would just watch them over and over and over, and I was just I can't have anything to do with this. I don't know. It broke me in a way that now just the laugh track and the constant one-room setups.
So were you? So you were just an ER girl? Did you?
No,
Did you?
I don't watch the ER. I don't know.
You're not.
Oh, you were watching weird anime.
Yeah, I was a weeb.
Okay, that's fine. That explains things. Okay.
I was like 12 and watching Ninja Scroll and being traumatized. Yeah, which my sister also didn't understand. So it was a fun time for us. We're again BFFs now, but
this is the perfect question for you.
My mother was very strict about television growing up. It wasn't home. My sister and I were latchkey kids. We would but somehow she always knew we were allowed to watch one TV show a week. That was our thing growing up because she was like, we got diagnosed with ADHD early, and she's like, this is bullshit. You just need to go outside. Essentially, was my mom's view, and so I feel like we didn't have cable for a long time growing up either. So you just missed out on a lot of actual.
I'm an only child, so my friend was the TV. So I don't know.
Exactly.
So Jorge loves sitcoms. His favorite is Friends. I cannot handle sitcoms, so there's.
Let me tell you something. Sitcoms are not meant for people who know how to tell good stories.
Well, that's true.
Sitcoms are for people who know how to string together a bunch of fight scenes and chase scenes with laughs, with giggles, with humor. And I think that's fine. I think that's good if you have the characters well developed. But I almost never commit myself to watching more than one different sitcom.
Mm-hmm.
Right now I'm watching Ghosts. I'm really enjoying it, but that's about it. You don't want to be sitting next to an editor when you're watching any television or movies. You do not want that. It will ruin the experience and probably ruin your friendship.
That's so very real. Also, I cannot stress enough that me not liking sitcoms is not me trying. It's not like a cool hipster thing.
No,
I watch reality TV, but
I cannot do that. I cannot do that. I cannot
watch reality TV.
Nope.
Oh yeah.
Can't handle it.
No, I get more than enough reality TV watching the news. Thank you.
Yeah. It has merch for some reason, and I don't like it.
I'll throw in. So my all-time favorite sitcom is something Mike and I talked about before the show, which is MASH.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah.
And I remember getting to stay up late because it was on at 9:00, and because it was on at 9:00, but it was already serialized, so I was watching it earlier. But like when the final episode aired on a Monday night at 9:00, I was allowed to stay up late because I think I was like 9 or 10.
Yeah.
So that was my all-time favorite. But right now, I pretty much watch Bob's Burgers on repeat when I go to sleep.
I had so many people telling me that I need to, and I everyone is like, you will understand life better.
Yes.
So, yes.
Everyone we know loves Bob's Burgers.
Oh yeah. No, it is.
Well, since you mentioned an animated sitcom, my favorite sitcom of all time, and this severely dates me, but I am an old man. My favorite sitcom of all time is Rocky and Bullwinkle.
That's fair. Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Oh, Rocky and Bullwinkle. Okay.
All time, I think it's the high water mark of American television.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. No, for some reason, and again, the United States exports entertainment, so we got almost everything. Rocky and Bullwinkle, it was one of the few that it didn't get back home until like way later into my teenage years
because of the communism.
But it was it's one of those like Flintstones, Jetstones, whatever Johnny Quest, the original.
It's the communism.
I love Johnny Quest. But Rocky and Bullwinkle was one that I had to go back and look way after, and I don't know if I ever got it because I think I was too late for that party.
Give it another shot.
That could be. You really do have to watch like a whole storyline, which could take years to do. But if not for that show, we would have had things like Mary Tyler Moore Show or other programs that where all of these great people got their start. And of course, animation and comics. If you're interested in comics, chances are pretty damn good you're interested in animation.
Yep.
And I have stated for the record on many occasions that my favorite interpretation of Batman is Batman the Animated Series.
Absolutely.
And my favorite Joker is Mark Hamill.
I mean, that is just an easy.
Yeah.
No, it's funny. Like that thing translate. I didn't. And again, this is another part of like growing up somewhere else. But obviously, I watched Batman in Spanish, so it wasn't until I think it was.
Of course.
It wasn't until I got. I think I was watching the Batman Beyond movie, the Return of the Joker one, that I watched it in English for the first time, and I was like, "Wait a second," and then I cracked onto that. And I was like, "Oh my God, that's Luke Skywalker!" It was that kind of discovery. There's I can't remember his name right now, but the guy who played the Joker in the Latin America dubbing of Batman the Animated Series was also phenomenal voice actor. Like it was just like the voice of the Joker is still in my head.
That's terrific to hear.
Yeah,
having a deep radio background, I've always worshipped voice actors.
Yeah,
and I did a lot of work with Second City, and so many of my friends from Second City became voice actors in addition to whatever else they went on to. Nowadays we know who the voice actors are, but back then, there was Mel Blanc and there was June Foray, and that was it. We didn't know anybody else, and it's such a wonderful art. I've done a little voice acting, loved it, but the idea of becoming 7 different characters over the course of a day, you're going to through all these different sessions, one after the other, and doing all these different voices and telling all these different stories. That's like that's a cornucopia of storytelling. It's wonderful.
I had the opportunity actually to go to a comic convention back in Venezuela, in Caracas, and at the time, a lot of dubbing for Latin America was happening between Mexico and Venezuela, because there's something about the accents that they could kind of like flatten the Spanish accent into something more common for everyone. And
that makes sense.
Yeah, and then I was working on the Teen Titans Go comic at the time, and they had me as a guest in that convention, and they put me with the voice actors who were dubbing Teen Titans Go in Spanish, in Latin American Spanish. And the guy who played Robin was also the guy who played Beast Boy in the Spanish version. And just listening to those stories, he was telling me even that there was an episode where Beast Boy is pretending to be Robin and Robin is pretending to be Beast Boy.
Oh yeah.
For him to have to figure out how one character would interpret the other character and do that voice at the same time, it was hilarious. And then halfway through the convention, he went on a stage and started singing as Beast Boy, and I was like, man, it's just insane the you have to have from those things.
The English dub of One Piece does a lot of it, right? Or one voice actor does multiple characters.
Yeah, there's also a lot. I mean, again, now
the greatest example of that is the Wabbit season, Duck season episode of Bugs Bunny, where Mel Blanc does Bugs Bunny being Daffy Duck, and then does Daffy Duck being Bugs Bunny. And that is the perfect, the ultimate example of that.
4 different voices.
Right.
It's 4 different voices. Now, Mel used to do all of the characters at once, all of those individual characters at once. So you do all of Bugs' lines and then do all of Daffy's lines. But then he had to do all of Bugs as Daffy's lines and vice versa. And Mel Blanc is my I'm sorry.
I was saying, I feel like you have to meditate for 5 minutes between that.
Really? Mel Blanc is one of the funniest guys ever to walk the
Yeah.
earth, and is also had the best sense of timing of any performer I've ever seen. YouTube has a clip of Jack Benny and Mel Blanc doing their last performance together on the Johnny Carson show.
Oh boy! All right.
And they ad-lib their famous seaside routine. And on the TV shows and the radio shows, or the Jack Benny shows, that he would always break Jack up at some point. And he did it again on Carson. You know, he actually flustered Jack Benny, which is almost impossible to do. I highly recommend you search this
I'll have
out.
to look that up.
It is one of the most wonderful performances of voice acting I've ever seen.
I'll have to look
Yeah.
that up.
So we are getting close to the end here. So I want to take a minute. What can we talk about? So we know that Morgan is hard at work on author, and
Yep.
that will be coming out shortly.
Yeah, I'll have the first issue October 1st.
Yep.
Sorry.
Spoilers. We got them here.
Yeah.
It'll be announced. in a
Breaking news. I got to get one of those tickers.
We have a ticker.
I know. I got to update it. I can't. I got to talk and type at the same time. There's a lot of stuff going on.
No, that's too much.
Jorge, are you still on Transformers right now, or are you...
Yeah, I'm working. I'm actually just yesterday finished the second to last issue of this arc. That is the last arc that I'm working with Daniel Warren Johnson on this run. So yeah, wrapping that issue. I have one more issue to go, and then after that, there are several kind of plans. There's a possibility of writing and drawing my own book for a while, which I haven't done in forever, and kind of working that out. There's also some other options over there, but nothing that I can.
He's got a couple things.
Right? Sure.
Yeah.
I am completely unsurprised by this comment. So, are you guys going to be at any shows that people will be able to see you at that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so a couple things just probably coming up. So actually next weekend we're going to be down, for anybody listening who's from Utah, at Black Cat Comics in Salt Lake City. It is their 20th year anniversary?
Something like that, yeah.
Big anniversaries. They're having us out, which we're really excited to be there at. So we're
That this weekend is that the 20th, 20,
yeah, the
21st, 22nd.
And then next month we will be in Walla Walla, Washington for a festival called Blood of Gods Annual Merrymaking.
Yep.
Which is a wine and heavy metal festival.
Yes.
Sounds fantastic.
It's
Yeah,
great.
I'm
It's
excited.
fun. It is a zine. The zine's called Blood of Gods that does heavy metal and wine pairings that both Jorge and I have done a bunch of art for.
Yeah.
So they're having us out. So tickets are on sale for that for anybody there who wants to go. That one's gonna be really fun.
Yep. Then Boise
Yeah, then hopefully we'll be at BCAF, which is the Boise Comic Arts Festival in Boise, Idaho. It's put on by the library there. That one is free to the public. And it's really fun, just a very supportive, very queer-spoken space, which is really great in Idaho, as you can imagine. They do a lot of youth outreach and different things like that. And there's also just a lot of fabulous and fun artists who come every year.
Yeah.
So that one's a real treat to go to. And then hopefully we're doing New York Comic Con this year.
Yeah.
Obviously still waiting to hear back about tables and stuff. But yeah, I think that's the other big one. And at the end of October, I will be doing Lightbox.
Oh, yeah, you're doing Lightbox
Which
too.
is
later
more
that
like animation, illustration, and game design. But I'll do my first year there. So pretty excited.
That's awesome.
Cool.
That is so
That's
good.
great.
Well, I will be at Heroes next week, and I will see a lot of your
No,
collaborators, and I will tell them.
We keep talking that we need to go back. We haven't done Heroes.
We thought about trying to do it this year, but then we signed up for Black Cat. So we're hoping next year to get back out there.
Yeah.
It's such a good show.
Well,
I haven't gone in quite a few years, but it's such a wonderful show.
Yeah. it
Also, if you happen to like barbecue, there's great barbecue there.
truly- Yep.
That's the place to go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for doing this. This was so wonderful. I really appreciated you guys doing this.
Thank you so
It's
much. for
great
having me.
fun.
We had a
You guys,
blast.
yeah. Absolutely.
All right.
Great
Well,
fun. It's really nice meeting you both.
Pleasure.
And I'm so happy to meet a married couple that seems so happy in the business. It's like, oh, deadlines.
It's the in the business part that makes it special.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We had
That's great.
Anecdote real quick before we go. Jeremy Lawson, who's in our studio, is a very good friend.
Oh yeah.
When we, obviously this was many moons ago now, but when we kind of announced to our friend group that we were dating, because we were all good friends before we got together, the first convention we went to, I think it was actually Heroes Con.
It might have been Heroes.
Jeremy came up to us and he was like, I want you guys to know. He's like, if you guys break up, we're going to have to split up Comic Cons the way divorced kids split up holidays.
Yeah.
But I didn't have that every day. Our whole friend group was like, don't do this to us. So they were really relieved when we got married.
Well,
That's
good job.
That's great.
Thank you guys so much
No,
for
thank
being
you.
here.
Yeah.
And we'll be in touch. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.
Take it easy, folks. It's great.
Mike, we are back. We missed last week, but we are primed and full of guests, super guests coming up.
For example,
Well, I'm gonna. Okay, we'll do it that way. You lead. We'll go next week, Tuesday. Be here. Kelly Sue DeConnick is going to be on the show. We've been planning this for months, literally. She's ready to go. We're going to talk about FML. We're going to talk about everything Kelly Sue. Hopefully the world gets a little better in between now and then, but she is going to be here on next Tuesday, 8:00. Be here.
If the world does not get any better by next week,
She'll still be here.
we will provide comfort.
Well, we try to do that all the time, and I appreciate.
No,
it
we drive
very much.
people crazy.
Well, you do. So,
My job. I'm
this
good
is
at it.
our upcoming slate for right now. What we have, Morgan and Jorge were just with us. Kelly Sue is going to be next week. We are going to do a recorded interview with Sarah Litt, or at least I will. Sarah lives in Europe, so she, unlike some of our previous guests who decided to stay up until like the wee hours of the morning to be live with us, is not going to do that. We're going to do a recorded session, so that'll be something to stay in, aware of. But on the 24th, Amanda Dybert and Kat Staggs, another married couple, is going to be on, and we're excited for that. And then Rich Case is finally going to be on the show, and I got some other people lined up after that we haven't quite nailed down times yet, but we will be here every Tuesday, and we might throw it Thursday if we have to. We'll figure it out, because we love being here for you guys. We love being here for and sharing comics and storytelling with people, and that's what we do.
Now more than ever.
Sure.
Now
Absolutely.
more than ever. Thank you, folks, for being here. We always appreciate it.
All right,
Mr.
we will
Rob?
see you. We will see you guys next week. Until then, have a good time.
Take it easy, folks.
This has been a production of the Pop Culture Squad Network. PopCultureSquad.com. How do you nerd?